Federal politics impacting New York State, with the Trump administration working to eliminate the Department of Education. We'll dig into this impact this could have and hear from a legal expert on how states might want to respond. Hello and welcome to Empire State Weekly. I'm John Gray.
And I'm Jamie DeLine. President Trump signing an executive order aimed at eliminating most of the Department of Education. According to the Trump administration, the goal of closing the department will give authority over education to the states.
However, this move is concerning to some, including the governor, who says many programs in New York schools depend on federal funding that comes from the Department of Education.
Because we also get a lot of money from the Department of Education for Pell Grants. We get 400,000 students have a chance at a higher education because of that. 500,000 kids with disabilities get money from the Department of Education, as well as the fact that 60% of children in the state of New York are lower income, again, funded by the Department of Education, which they're eliminating.
Joining us now to speak more about the legal response the states and educators might want to take in the wake of this executive order, Ryan McCall, an attorney with McCall, Sweeney & Silva. Ryan, thanks for coming on again.
Thank you for having me, John.
So, legally, I have a feeling all of this is going to end up in a court. If it hasn't today, it's going to happen probably pretty soon. Talk about the legal end of this. And, I mean, it's an executive order. He can't just eliminate the entire department, it sounds like, but he can certainly pare it down. What's your take on all that?
Correct. So the president has come out and said, regardless of his executive order, he understands that he's not able to dismantle the Department of Education without congressional approval. Now, I expect this to be heavily contested in court because what you're going to begin to see is cuts starting to happen to budgets. You're going to start seeing funds being redirected around that may not necessarily be the way that Congress appropriated them. So that is going to be a heavily litigated issue. Yeah,
it struck me watching all of these executive orders, Ryan, that, and I'm not taking sides for or against the president, but if Congress says we're going to propose $1 million to build a bridge, and then a president comes in and says, I'm going to sign an executive order that says don't build the bridge, you get this fight between the two branches where Congress says, but we want the bridge, that's why we funded it, and the executive might be overstepping trying to stop it. I know it's apples to oranges of what's going on now, but you see where I'm going.
Absolutely, and that's been a heavily contested part of this presidency so far, is where you're seeing things like you said, right? $1 million to build a bridge, then all of a sudden it becomes, okay, how can we redirect it so maybe it's not to build a bridge, but to go build a dam or something like that. That's really what you're beginning to see a lot of here, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out in court.
At the state level, is there anything they can do? I mean, we're hearing from the governor and others that they do rely on some federal money filtering down from the education department. Do you think we're going to see states and attorneys generals suing, saying we want that money regardless of what you did in D.C.?
Absolutely, especially at the state level. We here in New York State are blessed in the sense of we only really rely on the federal government for about 7% of our funding. So you're not going to see too much of an effect here in New York State, but other states, right, they may rely on 23, 25% of their education budget coming from the federal government. They're going to be the ones who are really going to consider suing because, again, this could greatly impact their ability to tax their citizens at the state level because now they're going to all of a sudden need to start making up this gap.
Well, and this could affect us locally. They say all politics is local, Ryan. If money does disappear for whatever reason and a local district doesn't want to cut programs, they're going to have to find the money somewhere else, which could be, I imagine, school taxes, property taxes, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. You would most likely see at the local level, if there's all of a sudden a deficit, how are they going to make it up? If the state's not able to come up with that money, you're going to begin to see those increases in school taxes, which isn't going to make most people happy.
I saw a graphic put up this week of all the legal challenges now. It filled a whole page on one of the network news. You wonder how many, I know the government has a lot of lawyers, but you wonder how many battles they can fight and how many court cases right now. I mean, certainly the lawyers are being kept busy, aren't they?
Absolutely. Right now, we're seeing one of the most hotly contested, litigated beginnings of any presidency in recent memory. And I expect that to continue to some degree because both sides have an argument. The president is able to advance his agenda to the way that he sees fit. However, with that being said, you're going to expect to see broad legal challenges for anything that he tries to do, which is going to encroach on state federal funding for education.
If educators happen to be watching this interview this morning, Ryan, like say a teacher or a superintendent, and they're worried about cuts or what's not coming their way that was always there before, is there anything they can do really legally, or is it more above their pay grade?
I think at this point, you're going to begin to see, if you're an individual teacher, to rely heavily on your union if you're part of the union. Begin talking to your local congressperson. They're really going to be the people that can give you that advice and at least chart the course of what they're looking to do. With that being said, I wouldn't expect to notice any immediate types of slashes to funding. This is going to be something that plays out over the next 3 months to a year. But as far as today and tomorrow, you're not going to see all that many changes, at least immediately.
And I know some people were joking online, maybe some weren't joking, thinking that if they have a federal student loan, well, if the department's gone, I guess there's no one to send my checks to anymore. That's certainly not the case. The government wants your money, right?
Absolutely. Unfortunately or fortunately, however you look at it, if you owe money to the federal government, they are going to see that that money is collected. Now, what you may begin to see is a shift towards who's collecting that money. There's been some speculation that the Department of the Treasury may begin overseeing repayment of these loans. So the amount that you're paying may not change, but who you're writing that check to may change.
I'll be curious too, Ryan, if after some of these initial cuts, not just in education, but elsewhere, if they don't start to realize maybe we need to add some things back in, because your effort might have been the right thought, but then you realize that when you get to the nitty gritty of it, some things are falling to the wayside or not getting done because, well, you eliminated that whole department. I'll be curious if we see some of that.
I wouldn't be surprised. As with anything, when you're looking to take large slashes, there's going to be things that we're going to have to look back and say, hey, we really do need this. Maybe there is that grant that the school needed in order to fund a program. So with that being said, I would expect there to be, regardless of the amount of cuts that take place, a bit of a look back period where we're able to say, okay, we made the major cut where whether that budget was 10, 20, 30% slashed, how can we begin getting some of these programs back so long as we're applying for it in the right way?
Well, I like your advice to the parents. Just kind of sit tight and wait and see. It might be a while if you see any. And of course, if you're a teacher, talk to the union, right?
Absolutely. I strongly recommend if you're a teacher and you're concerned, or you're a parent and you're concerned, reach out to your local union, your local congressperson. And if you're worried about your child not being able to get those resources that they need and you feel like the district can provide them, never hesitate to consult with an attorney on this issue.
All right. Attorney Ryan McCall, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for coming on with your insight. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me, John.
Okay. The cost of groceries, gasoline, and other necessities remains high across New York and the nation. When we come back, we'll break down new proposals to address affordability, and we'll hear from an economic expert on when we might see some change. By the way, if you have a comment or story idea, please tell us about it. You can email us at news@news10.com. We are also on X at WTEN. Welcome back to Empire State Weekly. Inflation continues to be a concern to many, and now with tariffs at the federal level, that's creating worry that prices could go up even further.
Lawmakers in Albany on both sides of the aisle proposing measures to help address the affordability issue.
Now, Republicans in the state Senate unveiling a series of bills to cut taxes and give cost reductions to families and businesses. One measure would end the tax on overtime pay. Another would give a $1,000 tax credit for parents who claim a newborn as a dependent.
The proposals follow the state Senate Democrats' recent $259 billion budget plan, which the Senate minority leader says will make affordability worse.
It is unbelievable that we're going to spend $17 billion more of taxpayer. We're going to raise taxes, increase taxes, chase more people out of here. Get rid of those rebate checks for most New Yorkers. I'm glad they kept it for the seniors. But you know who needs tax relief? Everybody.
Also this week, Democrat Congressman Josh Riley looking to address high egg prices. The proposed Lowering Egg Prices Act would eliminate what Riley calls unnecessary regulations that cause all eggs to be refrigerated after hatching, regardless if they will go through pasteurization later. According to Riley, this causes farmers to throw away nearly 400 million good eggs each year. Joining us now to give additional insight on affordability measures as well as other economic issues is Assemblymember Ed Rah. He's a Republican representing the 19th District. Thank you so much for joining us, Assemblyman.
Thanks for having me.
So I know the White House budgets recently came out. The Assembly put out one and the Senate put out one. Is there anything in there that you do like?
Well, there is. When you're spending the kind of money they're proposed to spend, there's going to be lots of things that we like. And some are things that we've talked about for years in our conference. This theme of affordability isn't new. The majorities kind of woke up to it this year. But we've been talking about things like making childcare more affordable, middle-class tax cuts, putting money back in the pockets of our taxpayers.
And what do you think about the checks that Governor Hochul proposed to send out to New Yorkers?
Well, I never say no to giving money back to our taxpayers, but it's a gimmick. It's a one-shot initiative. What we had talked about during the aftermath of the pandemic and as inflation was rampant, we had a plan that Leader Barkley introduced as a bill that would have basically reduced sales tax or gotten rid of sales tax on household items, things like that people are buying every day, so that they're getting that relief in real time. What the governor is doing here is basically saying, hey, we made all this extra money in sales tax over these last few years, and we're gonna give you a one-time check. Like I said, you never say no to it, but it's a one-shot gimmick. It's not something that's going to, in the long term, make New York more affordable.
And I know the governor proposed a $252 billion state budget. Do you think that's too much money that's being allocated to it?
Well, our growth of our state budget just continues to be tremendous. It's another $8.5 billion over where we're going to probably close out this financial year. So it's concerning. The problem is it's not sustainable. The governor's executive budget, when you look at the out years, you have a 3-year deficit of $27 billion. So the recurring spending and the recurring revenues don't line up. The assemblies would make that even worse. They're at about $38 billion in out-year deficits in their one-house budget, which drove up spending a little higher, up to $256 billion. So we just want to fund the things that we need to fund, but do it in a sustainable way.
And what are some other bills that Republicans would like to see included in the final state budget?
Well, we definitely like to see some of the child care stuff done. Both in terms of tax credits to make it more affordable, but also capital things like staffing to help those facilities. A big priority of ours is always infrastructure. The CHIPS program, which gives money to local governments for paving roads, doesn't have an increase proposed. And given the increase in costs, you just can't pave the same number of miles of roads with the same amount of money. So that's a big one as well. Clean water infrastructure, a number of things that we've been talking about as a conference.
And how does the Assembly bills line up with the Senate bills? Would you say that both conferences are on the same page?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these initiatives we've worked together with our Senate Republican colleagues, and we're trying to push forward with making New York more affordable, making our budget more sustainable, and certainly reversing the trends that we've had without migration, with not being attractive to businesses, so that we are making our state a place where people want to live, want to raise their family, want to open a business.
What would you say are some of the most controversial items in this year's proposed budget?
Well, at least in terms of between the executive and the legislative majorities, they pulled out a lot of the policy ideas in their one-house budgets. The governor has made what I think are relatively minor discovery reform changes, but I think the district attorneys feel they're necessary. So, hoping that gets across the finish line. There's obviously the big push for involuntary confinement to deal with, mentally ill individuals and help get them treatment. There has been some controversy around that issue, and I'm, hoping that we get something done on that. And then, one that really was a budget item last year. So there's not anything in this year, but there's a lot of us pushing for a delay, this CDPAP program. which provides services for both seniors and developmentally disabled individuals. And we're looking at an April 1st deadline for them to transition everybody under one umbrella of a fiscal intermediary. And it doesn't seem to be going well. And we're scared people are going to lose care. And we're pushing for a delay of that deadline.
We'll have to see how that goes. And my final question for you is, the state budget is due on April 1st. When do you think it will officially be finalized?
I think we'll go past April 1st, unfortunately, but I don't think we'll go as far past it as we have the last couple of years. So I think we'll get into the sweet spot, maybe, not next week, but hopefully later the following week. We do thankfully have a little bit more flexible calendar this year in terms of when, Easter and Passover holidays are. So, within that, I'd say first week to 10 days of April, I think we should be able to wrap it up.
Something to keep an eye out for. Thank you so much, Assemblyman. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
The Trump administration extending its deadline for New York City to end congestion pricing. When we return, hear from reporter Henry Rossoff on what the new extension means for drivers in New York City. If you have a comment or story idea, let us know. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X at WTEN.
A major win coming for Governor Kathy Hochul's congestion pricing. The federal government extending the deadline for the governor to end the program.
Here's Henry Rossoff with Pix 11 down in New York City to bring us the latest details.
New York Governor Kathy Hochul declaring a victory of sorts in New York City, riding an MTA bus along the 14th Street bus corridor after U.S. Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy says there will be a 30-day hold on any federal government plan to shut down congestion pricing. Now, the governor has said she was never going to turn the congestion pricing cameras off, and there is the possibility of ongoing litigation here between New York State and the federal government. The governor had failed to convince President Trump in at least 2 in-person meetings that congestion pricing should continue because traffic has in fact improved in the city, particularly in Midtown and in Lower Manhattan. Some of the environmental improvements that were promised have happened already, and tens of millions of dollars have flowed into the coffers of the MTA. Now, in the post on social media where Secretary Duffy announced there would be a 30-day hold on plans to end congestion pricing, he did threaten to pull billions of dollars from the MTA if some sort of deal was not reached. But the governor viewing this very much as the federal government blinking in these negotiations. And in fact, this is the second time just in the past week that Secretary Duffy threatened to pull funding from the MTA. The first time was when he said safety was not being improved underground. Well, Mayor Eric Adams has said we've seen double-digit crime increases, and in the last 8 months, 900 homeless people removed from the MTA, a subway system, and connected with services. So the mayor says he's going to invite DOT officials down, take a look at what is and is not happening. In New York City, I'm Henry Rossoff, sending it back to you.
Going out to dinner could soon be a little bit cheaper.
That's if a new bill encouraging customers to dine out during specific times of the year is approved by state lawmakers. If a new bill gets passed during the second full week of February and the third full week of August, New York customers could see a slightly lower bill when they go out to eat at restaurants. Assemblyman Angelo Santa Barbara wants to eliminate the state portion of the sales tax as a way of encouraging more people to visit their local eateries.
This applies to the sales tax, so the local portion still stays intact. It does, if they want to opt in, they can do that too.
He says those specific weeks in February and August are slow times for the restaurant industry. Melissa Fleischute, president and CEO of the New York State Restaurant Association, likes his idea.
It is a struggle. It's been a struggle now for us and continues to be due to high costs, inflation, sourcing our products, the threat of tariffs. We have a lot going on in the restaurant industry. So anyone who's willing to, reach out a hand and try and help the industry is greatly appreciated right now.
So how much could you save on your tab if a customer has a $100 bill? Taking off the 4% state sales tax would result in a $4 savings. I asked Melissa Fleischu if she thinks that would be enough of a draw to get customers in the door.
In the marketplace, we're seeing a lot of people just being very cautious right now because there's so much economic uncertainty. So I think it would be an incentive that people would consider.
The proposal currently does not have a Senate sponsor. The Assemblyman is hoping it will be included in the final state budget.
So this provides all the right elements, I think, of everything we're talking about the state capitol in the budget this year, trying to save people a little bit of money, encourage more economic growth, and supporting our communities in any way that we can.
Stick around. Back with a look at the week ahead in just a bit.
If you have a comment or story idea, let us know. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X at WTEN.
And finally on Empire State Weekly, as budget season continues towards April 1st deadline, we're keeping an eye on how negotiations could impact the state's generous tax credits given to the film productions.
Those tax credits coming under scrutiny this year as an independent study determines the state only received 31 cents back on every dollar that they invest in the program.
We'll keep an eye on any developments on that and, of course, bring you the latest analysis. For now, from all of us here at Empire State Weekly, I'm John Gray.
And I'm Jamie DeLine. We'll see you here next week.
Don't you forget, you can watch this show all over New York State. Here's the full schedule of Empire State Weekly on 10 TV stations across the great state of New York.